Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And telling the truth, today, this morning, we got probably the most unexpected update probably for the previous 5 weeks, probably since the Russians carry out their pipeline operation in the Suzy direction, because today something similar happened. So telling the truth, I was planning to start making video around 30 minutes ago, or maybe like an hour ago, and right before I started making this video first time, we got first report from pro-Ukrainian sources about Russian breakthrough, and then this information was confirmed by pro-Russian resources, and I was forced to postpone this video for at least 1 hour. So what did happen today? As you can see, we have very weird and very strange update of the map between the city of Toretsk and the settlement of Plishevka, which is basically the outskirts and the beginning of the Kostiantynivka agglomeration. So we have adjusted the map, and as you can see, we haven't colored this territory neither in the Russian favor nor in the Ukrainian favor. We decided to keep this area as a gray zone and contested area, but we believe that by the end of the 10th of April, we will decide how to color this territory, whether in the Russian favor or in Ukrainian favor. So what did happen? The Ukrainian source published this video, and they were the first who published this, and they're saying that in this video we can see how the Russians were using the significant convoy, the significantly big, huge convoy of vehicles heading from the city of Toretsk in the northern direction. And the Ukrainian source added that the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense, that the situation is critical, completely unpleasant, and that the Russians, as a result of offensive, managed to reach the outskirts of the settlement by the name of Plishevka. So in this video we can see lots of episodes how the Ukrainians were trying to repel Russian attack, how the Ukrainians were attacking the Russians with FPV drones. 2 episodes of this big video were geolocated. This is the first place, and this is basically the beginning of the video according to different sources, where the Russians probably were begun moving, and this is probably one of the latest let's say episodes of the same video. So based on this video we can make a conclusion that the Russians, using the huge convoy of vehicles, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, were moving along TO 516 road from the city of Toretsk towards the city of Plishevka with the purpose to establish complete control over this territory and basically to completely destroy Ukrainian logistic and Ukrainian lines in this direction. So that was the Russian plan and the Russian goal. Currently we don't know for sure whether the Russians managed to achieve this, to finish this task or not, because the video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see just lots of FPV drone attacks on the Russian units and the Russian vehicles. But Ukrainians have already reported that they managed to repel the drones. Ukrainian drones managed to clear the territory, but without any proofs and without any geolocations. When talking about the Russians, they are not commenting this situation. This obviously very secret and very important operation, because if the Russians once again indeed manage to take under control the area between Plishevka, Alexandra Shultine and Kleban-Byk water reservoir, this is going to be the beginning of a very big and huge disaster for the armed forces of Ukraine. To the east of this point, we're talking about the territories between the villages of Alexandra Shultine, Bela Gora, Delivka, and the southern Delivka, and of course this is the situation that will lead to complete collapse and disaster for the Ukrainians in the area of this pocket between Kleban-Byk water reservoir and the settlements like Acheretina, Novobakhmutovka. Now let's continue. So the Russians managed to break through. We are not saying, and this is very important, that the Russians managed to capture all these fields. This is the most important point, that the Russians, by breaking through Ukrainian defense, haven't captured all these territories. And this is another reason why we're not coloring this territory in the Russian favor. The Russians were trying to capture just this territory and to hold their positions in this circle as long as possible, because now the Ukrainians can do just one thing. They can counterattack these this pocket from the north and from the, let's say, northeast and from the south, with the purpose to restore control over this territory. Because if the Ukrainians can't restore the situation, can't restore this territory, once again, I'll repeat myself, the logistic in this area collapses, the logistic in this area doesn't work anymore. So now the Ukrainians, on the 10th of April, they have just one focus: to counterattack in this area with the purpose to force the Russians to fall back. But telling the truth, and when talking about this pocket, I'm not sure that the Russians have any direction where they can fall back, because they are completely encircled. And at the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation along the entire line of combat contact around the city of Terezk, and of course in the pocket to the south of the Kleban-Byk water reservoir. Now let's discuss other front lines, other areas from this front line in details. The Ukrainians, during the previous 24 hours before the beginning of this Russian greatest, let's say, offensive operation, counterattacked the Russian positions along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal. And according to different mappers and according to several geolocations, the Ukrainians managed to restore control over some positions. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 9th of April of 2025, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 10th of April. Once again, several mappers reported that Ukrainians, as a result of counterattack, managed to restore control over some positions in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Druzhba, and they managed to restore control over this stronghold along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal. So this is the situation. When talking about the pro-Ukrainian sources, they confirmed additional progress on the ground, that the Russians managed to improve their positions from the village of Druzhba towards the same point. So we believe that there are very heavy clashes exactly for this area. We have proofs and geolocations that confirm Russian control, and we have proofs and geolocations that confirm the Ukrainian control over this territory. As for this area, we have already discussed, but let's discuss the changes on the map. This is the situation once again by the end of the 9th of April, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 10th of April. According to the information we have, this attack, this video was published today, and this attack was carried out by the Russians this morning between the nights of the 10th of April and the 10th of April of 2025. Furthermore, we have adjusted completely the Zabalka district in the Russian favor. Today, we got information from several mappers that the Russians managed to secure this territory completely, not just the western outskirts of the Zabalka micro district, but also the trenches and the fortifications in the fields. I'll remind you that yesterday there was a video published by the Ukrainians where they were attacking the Russians on the territory of the Terikon, on this strategical elevation. As for the end of the 9th of April, we didn't adjust anything. It was just video that confirmed Russian control over this territory, but now we came to the conclusion that most likely by control of this point, most likely the Russians secured the western part of the Baikal micro district as well. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the southern, in the pocket to the south of the Kleban-Byk water reservoir. As you can see, we have lots of icons in this area. Basically, we have 6 icons with the flags from this pocket, which means that the Russians began their offensive operation in this direction with the purpose to cut this salient. And now we understand the real reason why the Russians attacked in this area. First of all, they attacked in this area to force the Ukrainians to take all their reserves and their, let's say, reinforcements with the purpose to stabilize the situation here. At the same time, the Russians are advancing here, and we believe that Ukrainians currently have lots of problems with logistic and lots of problems with reinforcements and reserves that they can use, for example, to stabilize the situation in the village of Kalinova, Panteleymanivka, Valentinovka, and Sukhaya Balka. When talking about this pocket, currently the Russians are attacking using 4 roads of attacks. As you can see, we haven't adjusted the map, let's say, in someone's favor, just updates according to different sources. So what did happen? According to information we have, the Russians began another offensive operation from the village of Leonidovka and New York towards the settlement of Romanovka. And the main purpose of this attack is to get as close as possible to the village of Romanovka itself and to this injection of roads of N20 road and the road that goes from the village of Zarya. So the Russians, by this attack, are trying to establish complete FPV drone and fire control over this road, over this logistic road, and one of the most important arterials that Ukrainians use to support their forces in this pocket. Furthermore, the Russians began another wave of attack with the purpose to get as close as possible to the N20 road from the from the east and to outflank the Ukrainian positions in Valentinivka. This information was provided us by neutral mappers. So the Russians improved their positions with the purpose to take under control, to outflank the village of Valentinivka from the southwest and to get as close as possible to this intersection of roads with the purpose to cut the supply and support of the villages by the name of Sukhaya Balka and Valentinivka. So most likely during the next several hours we might get additional updates from this territory. Another attack took place in the vicinity of Alexandropol. This information was provided us by neutral mappers. As for this direction, we see that the Russians just increasing their pressure with the purpose to maintain the lines and to be always very close to the main area of clashes. Do not to have huge front lines, just small lines, small, let's say, lines of combat contact where they can concentrate less forces. Another roads of attack. So when talking about this, once again, the Russians are trying to establish complete control over this territory with the purpose to cut the injection of roads and to establish complete fire control over Valentinivka and Sukhaya Balka. Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours, according to different sources, the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt in the village of Kalinovo. As a result of offensive operation, the Russians, by the morning of the 10th of April of 2025, established control for over more than 50% of the settlement, and the Russians continue advancing. As for this direction, the Russians are trying to establish complete control, of course, and to encircle Ukrainians who are currently located in this pocket. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the vicinity of Tarasovka. We haven't adjusted anything as for this village because all adjustments were already made to this territory, and the neutral mappers just confirmed basically our map. Furthermore, we understand that from this foothold, from the Russians are planning to move further in the direction of Alexandropol. This is very important village, and if the Russians establish complete control over this territory, they will be able to get as close as possible to the settlement of Zarya and to the main supply roads that may go from the village of Zarya towards the village of Yablunivka through the fields. So we see that the Russians today, maybe yesterday in the evening, so between the 9th and the 10th of April, began a major offensive operation with the purpose to defeat the Ukrainians to the south of the Kleban-Byk water reservoir, to take this territory under complete control, to, let's say, to spread panic among Ukrainian forces and to force them to fall back from this territory. And as we can see, according to first geolocations, according to first updates from this area, we see that the Russians during the previous 24-48 hours managed to get significant results, and probably they will continue show us results during the next 24 hours. So now the major battle for the city of Kostiantynivka most likely has begun. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation a bit further to the north of the city of Kostiantynivka and the city of Reservoir. As you can see, during the previous 24 hours, we got lots of different icons, lots of different videos. The Russians during the previous night were bombing and attacking the city of Slavinsk, the city of Kramatorsk, the vicinity of both settlements, the entire agglomeration. The Russians were bombing and attacking the warehouses, the ammo depots, the concentration of Ukrainian forces, and with the same purposes, not to allow the Ukrainians to redeploy or to introduce additional forces in the Kostiantynivka direction with the purpose to stabilize the situation. We believe that today the Russians will begin offensive operation from the city of Reservoir, also in the western direction, towards the city of Kostiantynivka. As for this attack, the Russians have the same goals and the same tactics, the same tasks to slow down the Ukrainians, to probably pin down their reinforcements and reserves, and not to allow the Ukrainians to redeploy units and forces in the southern direction. So we see that the front line is crumbling from the Ukrainian side, and today we expect lots of updates, obviously. As for the Ukrainians, we believe that the Ukrainians can carry out their own counter-offensive operation, and we expect that with the purpose to stabilize the situation, the Ukrainians can use MO3 road to counterattack the Russians to the northwest of the city of Bakhmut and to the west of the city of Solidar. And as for now, we see that the Russians managed to discover some concentration of Ukrainian forces, and the Russians during the previous several days and today were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions, Ukrainian tanks and vehicles with the purpose to reduce reduce this concentration of forces and not to allow the Ukrainians to collect a critical mass. But regarding the fact whether the Russians managed to, let's say, break Ukrainian plans to concentrate critical mass, we expect offensive operation because Ukrainians have no options. They need to counterattack in this area with the purpose to slow down the Russians and to force the Russians to use their reinforcements and reserves with the purpose to stabilize the situation between the city of Solidar and Bakhmut. So major battle has begun once again. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Liman direction, where the Russians also managed to improve their position significantly. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to secure completely the village of Nadia. If you remember, we were talking about this yesterday. The Russians of the 20th Army published this video where we can see the outskirts of the settlement of Nadia, where we can see the Russian soldiers moving in the fields, and in the final part of this video we can see the Russian soldier. This is the Russian soldier that was waving with the Russian flag in the forest. So this video was geolocated, and this is exactly the point where the Russian soldier raised his flag. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map. We don't know for sure whether the Russians managed to take under complete control the village of Nadia, but obviously due to the video with the flag, we believe that this is going to happen very soon. At the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the southern direction. Here we can see additional progress on the ground that was published by different neutral mappers. The Russians, as you can see, as a result of offensive, managed to improve their positions, and they continue outflanking the city of Novo and Lipovo from the south. And we have geolocation that confirms Russian control over this forest between Yampolovka and the city village of Tarskoye. This video was published by the Ukrainian side, and here we can see how the Ukrainians were actively droning and attacking the Russian units in this area. Based on this video, we have adjusted and we have colored the contested area in the Russian favor. So we still haven't received anything that can confirm Russian control over this village of Tarskoye, but now we have enough of updates to confirm that the Russians control the area around the village of Tarskoye. So this is the situation on the ground. Now let's move to Istanbul, Turkey. Today we have another very important day. According to information we have today, the second round of the negotiations of talks between Russia and the United States of America, starting members of the Russian delegation headed by Ambassador to the United States Darchiev arrived in Istanbul, where negotiations with the American side are scheduled for tomorrow. This article was published yesterday, and today we got information about the first results of these talks. Russian and American delegations arrived for talks in Istanbul. Russia and the United States agreed on guarantees for banking services for their diplomatic missions. Russian contributions to the budgets of international organizations. Russia will raise the issue of resuming direct flights with the United States and consultations in Istanbul. The meeting of Russian and US representatives in Istanbul is intended to help get rid of the toxic legacy of the Biden administration. Contacts between Putin and Trump have already made it possible to advance on the issue of issuing visas to Russian and US diplomats and ease their travel regime. So we have a very important step, as you can see. Furthermore, we have information that today was another prisoner exchange between the Russian Federation and the United States of America. Both sides send each other spies. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.